Leia let out a huff. Luke sighed. He'd known this was coming the moment Ben mentioned a Rodian. He shook his head in warning. "What? What is it?" Leia demanded, noticing his expression. Their shared anger toward their parents momentarily redirected toward each other. "You know what," Luke told her, keeping his voice low. "Stop making us look foolish with your linguistic prejudices." Leia's prejudices trace back to Master Yoda. From ages 15 through 17, she had resided on Coruscant, ostensibly to study at the Jedi Temple, but really hoping proximity to her parents might finally earn her an audience with them. It never did. What she got instead were 2 years of exposure to Yoda's teachings, and his wisdom. The ancient master, his mind not yet surrendered to decay, had strong opinions about non-humanoid species, particularly regarding their auditory aesthetics. Primitive, their vocalizations are. Language, I would not call it. Gargling swamp water, more dignified would be. He'd mutter these observations during lessons, between lessons, sometimes in place of lessons entirely. Leia, craving a parental figure's approval, had absorbed every word, without question. By the time she left, she could recite his taxonomic ranking of lesser linguistic structures from memory. Tuscan grunts near the bottom, just above Rhodese. Leia looked offended. She shot to her feet, eyebrows rising. "Linguistic prejudice?" she snapped. "I don't have a problem with any language, as long as the sounds resemble actual words. But if you start making noises like you're gargling rocks and call it a language, I'm going to slap your teeth out." She then launched into a series of incomprehensible vocalizations, clicking, whistling, gurgling, while making wild gestures with her arms. With a lazy flick of her wrist, a tall, untouched glass of amber spirit flew from a nearby crate and slapped into her palm. She took a mouthful, gargled elaborately, then spat the liquid onto the sand. "Did you understand that?" she asked Luke. "I just delivered a comprehensive speech on the difficulties of having you as a brother." Obi-Wan had mentally disconnected from their exchange. He swayed slightly, squinting blearily at his datapad, fingers tapping randomly as he attempted, and repeatedly failed, to determine whether he was scrolling through his holofeed, comlog, or comchat. All he knew for certain was that he desperately needed to contact Greedy, and right now, the glowing screen offered no helpful clues. Beside him, the twins' exchange escalated quickly. Punches flew and dodges occurred, dissolving into a furious close-quarters grapple where arms locked in a fierce stalemate. Unable to break the hold, one twin hooked a foot behind the other's ankle, snapping the balance of the struggle and sending both sprawling into a chaotic heap on the sand. They looked like two inebriated fighters settling unfinished business outside a seedy Coruscant bar in the lower levels, a common sight past 10 p.m. Their refined force abilities were held in check, since drawing undue attention was never an option. Obi-Wan, still disconnected from reality, glanced up momentarily. Unusually hot for 8 o'clock, he observed to no one in particular, then returned to his datapad. A taxi pulled up nearby, its repulsor lifts whining as it settled onto the ground. A Rodian emerged, his green skin muted to a deep, murky hue in the limited light. Casually sidestepping the chaotic brawl unfolding in the sand, he approached Obi-Wan with the caution of someone perpetually expecting an ambush. "Ah, Greedy, my friend," Obi-Wan called, tucking away his datapad. The Rodian said, or so the Rhodese language sounded to Leia, who'd just gained a momentary upper hand in her fight by tossing a handful of sand directly into Luke's open mouth. In reality, the language was somewhat less crude. Translated into basic, the Rodian had said, in a perfectly professional tone, "It's Greedo, not greedy." "Ah, yes, of course," Obi-Wan agreed. "We can depart now," he added, gesturing toward the twins still brawling in the sand. Greedo observed the ongoing scuffle with detached professional interest. Figuring Kenobi's associates were definitely not locals and unlikely to speak Rhodese, he tapped a translator device on his wrist. "Not so fast," he said, the device converting his native clicks into clipped, precise basic. "We need to renegotiate payment." "The terms were already established," Obi-Wan replied, suddenly demonstrating remarkable clarity. "I require additional compensation, or I withdraw my services," Greedo stated flatly, gesturing toward the twins. "You didn't mention you'd have company. Those two look like trouble. Trouble means risk. Risk means credits." He tilted his head. "Besides, it's not like a Jedi is ever short on funds." Obi-Wan sighed. "Very well, my friend. We'll renegotiate inside the cantina." "Acceptable," Greedo replied. Obi-Wan turned toward the twins, who remained entangled in their futile confrontation. He moved to separate them, but his footing betrayed him. Losing balance mid-step, he toppled forward and landed face first in the sand with a muffled grunt. He pushed himself upright, spitting grit from his mouth and readjusting his glasses before addressing them with exaggerated dignity. "You can resume your disagreement later. Currently, we must negotiate with Greedy." "Greedo," the Rodian corrected again, emphasizing each syllable. Obi-Wan, eager to salvage what remained of his poise, quickly got to his feet and marched briskly toward the cantina entrance, leaving a thin trail of sand behind him. Greedo followed closely, still casting wary glances toward the disheveled twins as they reluctantly separated, brushing sand from their clothing. "Why were they fighting?" Greedo inquired. "They're from Eriadu, my friend," Obi-Wan explained without hesitation. "It's a cultural practice." Greedo accepted this explanation with a nod, following Obi-Wan toward the cantina entrance. The twins exchanged final glares before falling into step behind them. The cantina opened into a single large room beneath a low vaulted ceiling strung with strips of blue light. Everything was clay, pale, sun-baked adobe, smoothed by years of use. The bar counter stretched along the wall to the right of the entrance, a thick slab of the same material with a rounded edge, tall seats arranged in front of it. Behind the counter, shelves were carved directly into the wall, holding rows of bottles and drinking vessels. A bartender worked the space between. Every other usable bit of wall space was taken up by booths, bench seating arranged around low circular tables, all molded from clay, each booth large enough for 6 average-sized humans, backrests rising to shoulder height. Patrons filled most of them, hunched in conversation or nursing drinks, their faces half lit by the blue glow from above. The hum of alien dialects filled the air. The four made their way along the wall, passing occupied booths. Obi-Wan stopped at one where 2 humans sat, a subtle gesture of his hand, and both rose, muttering about prior engagements as they shuffled away. As Obi-Wan and Greedo moved to take the newly vacated seats, Luke took Leia by the upper arm. "Best you don't sit with them," he said, steering her past the remaining booths down toward the bar counter. "Yeah? And why is that?" Leia demanded. Luke steered her onto an empty seat. "Please, just sit here. Have a drink." He signaled the bartender with 2 raised fingers. The man began filling 2 glasses with amber spirit. The sharp, botanical scent drifted over, the same rot gut, the inner rim repackaged under fancy labels and sold at 40 times the price. "I'll go talk to Greedy or whatever his name is with Ben." "Why am I—" "Leia," Luke interrupted. "His gargling noises will annoy you, okay? I will be right back. Just sit here and try not to break anything." She finally sat down, lips compressing into a thin line. As Luke turned away, she mouthed a curse at his back. Without turning, he returned the gesture with a crude hand signal. Luke approached the table where Greedo and Obi-Wan had settled, the Rodian's eyes fixed upon Luke's face, studying him with uncomfortable intensity. "What?" Luke challenged, sliding into the booth beside Obi-Wan. Across from them, Greedo sat with his back to the room. Past the Rodian's shoulder, Luke could see the bar counter in the distance, where he'd left Leia. Greedo's translator emitted a mechanical click before converting his Rhodese. "You look familiar." Obi-Wan quickly redirected the conversation. "Regarding your compensation, Greedo..." Luke felt a pulse of annoyance at the Rodian's suspicion. Across the cantina, Leia sensed his irritation. She downed what remained of her glass, a small tumbler, barely 3 fingers of liquid, and reached for the second. "Having a bad night?" The voice came from beside her. Leia turned to her right to find a human male occupying the adjacent seat. Dark hair swept carelessly across his forehead, a spacer's vest with numerous concealed pockets, and a blaster holstered against his thigh. His eyes contained a peculiar combination of cynicism and optimism that suggested someone operating at the margins of legality while maintaining his own ethical code. "Yeah, you could say that," she replied. "I'm Han Solo," he offered with an easy confidence.